So.
I'll make sure to let Nick know that you think he's awesome, like everybody else does.
For sure.
All right, well, thanks so much, Tyler, for being on the show. Why don't we start out by just having you tell us a little bit about you and your business, how you got going with your business, and all that good stuff. Tell us all about you.
Sure. First of all, I just want to say thank you so much for having me on here. I just want to give you guys kudos right off the top. I think you guys are doing an awesome job with the podcast, with the YouTube channel, all that stuff. I'm always super impressed with all of your graphics and just your videos and the quality of all that sort of stuff. So
awesome.
Kudos to you straight off the top.
All me. I made every single one of those graphics. Not really. Nick
Wait,
did it all.
Though, who makes Nick does all,
Yeah.
does all of it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So kudos to Nick. The stuff looks really, really good. I have a graphic design background, which I'll talk about in a second here. So I can appreciate some good design and some good typography. So kudos to you guys on all that stuff.
I'll make sure to let Nick know that you think he's awesome, like everybody else does.
For sure. But anyway, yeah. So my name is Tyler Herrinton. I'm a wedding filmmaker based here in Richmond, Virginia. We are a husband and wife team. My wife Ashley and I, and we have been doing weddings for about 6 years now. We started doing it together right after we got married, which was in June of 2013. I had started doing the business when I was in college. Before that, a couple of years before that. So I've been doing weddings for probably 8 or 9 years now. We've been doing it together for about 5 or 6, and we've been full time for I think 4 years now, which is pretty crazy to think about. But yeah, so basically I started in the photography world. I started doing photography and stuff like that when I was in high school, and when I went to college, I was really passionate about photography. I really wanted to study photography, but they didn't have a photography degree. So I found myself in the graphic design program, which I actually really did enjoy. And through the graphic design program, I was able to take a ton of photography classes as just kind of like art electives and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because of that, a lot of people, knew me as a photographer because I had a DSLR, which people thought was a nice camera. So like a lot of people, one of my friends was like, "Hey, I'm getting married. I don't want to pay a professional photographer. Would you be willing to do it?" And, so I was like, sure. It was like, $200 or whatever. I did that for him. And I studied a lot. Like I spent a lot of time researching and paying attention to and just looking stuff up on YouTube and spending a ton of time trying to do the best I could for that first wedding. And I think like all in all, considering I had no idea what I was doing, it went pretty well. And it was kind of just like the right place, the right time. All of my friends were either a little bit older than me, were all graduating and getting married. And then I had a lot of my friends that were my age that were doing the same. So I was just kind of like in this perfect season. It was just sort of this perfect storm. And it kind of just happened without me realizing what was going on. Yeah. Next thing I know, I'm skipping football games to go shoot weddings, and I'm doing all this stuff, and I'm making a website, and all the sort of stuff that you do when you're first starting out. But the way I got into video was when I shot that first wedding, I invested in a Canon 60D, which was the first DSLR that I ever owned that shot video, which I think a lot of us might have started out on that camera.
Yeah,
it was a fantastic little camera, a good little like prosumer camera to start off with. And I was actually DJing. I use air quotes about that because I basically was showing up with a sound system that I knew how to set up from our, the ministry I was involved in on campus. They knew I knew how to set it up and that I knew how to use a computer. So basically they gave me a playlist and wanted me to just run this playlist on this sound system. So anyway, long story short, I had to go to the rehearsal dinner in order to set all this stuff up, and they needed to use the sound system for that. So at the rehearsal dinner, I brought my 60D along, and I just shot a bunch of clips, of random stuff, them doing the rehearsal dinner, coming down the aisle, kids playing, all these random little things. I went home that night, put it into iMovie, slapped some explosions on the sky on that puppy, and posted it on Facebook, right? As just like a little fun thing for the bride and groom. Didn't really think anything of it. I didn't really know much about video. I don't have much of a background in video at this point. But it was just, it was like a fun thing to do. The next day at the wedding, one of my buddies came up to me. He's like, "Dude, I saw that thing you posted on Facebook. It was so great. You could probably charge like $1,000 or something like that." And I was like, $1,000?
That's more money than I've ever seen in my whole life.
Yeah. And I was like, college kid. I'm like, $1,000. I'm like, maybe you're onto something, So I was pursuing the photography thing, and I was starting to, get into that more. And then this video thing kind of just came alongside like that. And again, I didn't really think much of it until fast forward probably like 6 or 8 months, and a mom from a girl I knew from youth group back home came up to me in an airport in the Dominican Republic. We were on a mission trip, and she was like, "Hey, I saw that Facebook video that you posted like over the summer about, so-and-so's wedding. Would you be able to make a video like that for my daughter's wedding next summer?" And I was like, I guess,
yes, I
sure.
can.
So, yeah, at this point, I had already started investing in photography gear. So I had bought a 5D Mark III at this point, and I had some L series lenses. I was kind of starting to get more into photography, and I had my business license, and I was doing that, and it was kind of growing that as I was finishing up college. But I was like, yeah, sure, I'll figure it out. So again, I went on and I watched every single still motion tutorial known to mankind.
Yes.
I just poured myself into wedding videos. It's kind of the same way that I did about the photography for that first photography wedding I shot. I did the same thing for the next 8 months for video, and learning everything I could online, everything I could about, storytelling, and really taking that still motion perspective and way of thinking about things to heart, and then combining that with the photography knowledge that I have. And I was actually able to make a pretty good, all things considered, video for these people, for this first wedding. Mm-hmm. And then from there, we just started offering photo and video, and the rest is kind of history. But it was so last year was our first year that we finally switched away from photography, and we just offered video. Okay. So we're officially now, so this season that we just finished was our first full year. The year before that, we had 2 photo weddings, and then the rest video. So, but from the time that I shot my first video up until then, there was probably 4 or 5 years there where we shot about half our weddings every year were photo, and half of them every year were video.
Okay. And so that was from 9 years ago. So what year was that? Like 2010?
So it was probably like 2011 was the very beginning, that very first wedding. So however long that was, 8, I guess like 8-ish years ago, depending on what month it was, up until now. Okay. So 8 years later.
And so what were you charging like for that? Like what was the amount that you charged?
So the first wedding, I think it was like $250. Uh-huh. The first video wedding, I think I charged $1,200. Okay. Because, like I said, I had some equipment, and I knew what I was doing as far as weddings go. I'd shot a handful of weddings at that point for photography, so I felt comfortable charging a little bit more. Yeah. But yeah, so.
And I mean, especially I remember when I got going, $1,200. It's like, what? Like somebody would pay me to do this, and it's something that I love to do. I mean, I'm, just that I always ask and love hearing the story of how people, kind of have evolved, especially because a lot of our listeners too are maybe newer, and they're seeing everybody, all these people on these Facebook groups and promoting like, oh, I charged, $7,500 for this wedding. And it's like, you start comparing, yourself among yourself. You start comparing to somebody's 200th wedding when it's your second wedding. And I just think it's always good to hear like the humble beginnings of where people, have gotten going and stuff like that. And so you fast forward now to 2018, you're exclusively video, you're shooting with your wife. So it's the team. I came across you a couple of years ago just in the Facebook groups and stuff, and was just like, there was this really fresh, like light and airy vibe about you guys, and it was like, oh, these sweet kids are like in love, and they have like the Herringtons, and they like, and then I was like, wow, they're kind of like kicking butt. Like, I mean, they're actually, like they're doing things that it's like have been on my back burner for a long time. It's like, oh, they're doing this YouTube channel, and they're doing these things. Why don't you talk a little bit about kind of what the business looks like today with, all of the Herringtons type things that you're doing?
Yeah, for sure. And I think what's interesting about that, and I think what I would attribute that to, why we maybe have a little bit of like a fresh perspective, or why we might seem a little bit different from the rest of the industry, I think is because of that photography background that we have. And a lot of the way that I grew my business and the principles that I kind of instilled into my business from the very, very beginning came from some of these photographers who were kind of leading this change, this revolution in the photography industry that started in 2008, 2010, that kind of time period. So that's kind of how I started growing my business. And then we sort of just adapted a lot of those things into our video business as we kind of slowly started transforming into being just video. So that's where I think a lot of that comes from. And I think we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go on. Yeah. But yeah, as far as like our business and stuff like that goes, it's funny because we're actually definitely like a really big transition point right now. Mm-hmm. So Ash is pregnant, which is super awesome. And we're really excited about that. She's due in May. So we know that our whole world and everything is about to get completely rocked. Thank you. Yep. So we're actually like in a really big sort of like transition point in our business right now. But a lot of stuff you're talking about, we definitely have, we have the YouTube channel, the education side. We've been trying to grow things like our email subscriber list. Mm-hmm. We have been putting out, online courses and doing education online with webinars and, all these different things. And, like you said, the YouTube channel is something that is really fun and passionate about. I have a podcast. We've kind of been doing a lot of these different things to go alongside with, the weddings. And then on top of all that, we also have been doing a good amount of commercial work and, creating educational content for photographers and friends in the industry and those types of things. So, the business definitely, I don't know, we focus on weddings if weddings has been our priority up until this point, but we've also kind of known that we can't do weddings forever and that it's just sort of a lifestyle that we can't maintain of doing, 25, 30 weddings every single year. And we're kind of finally at that point now where we're not gonna be able to do that anymore, as our lives begin to change. So we've been kind of slowly setting ourselves up in the background to have all these extra sort of things that we can kind of turn on and turn off whenever we want to, and kind of trying to set ourselves up for success going forward that doesn't rely so much on weddings.
Because you can only, shoot so many weddings. And my brain, since I was a kid, it's like, I bought and sold Beanie Babies, and I had lemonade stands and baseball cards and remote yard. And like, I've always just had this like wanting to work to earn money and, entrepreneurial thing in me. And I can feel that with you guys for sure. Cause it's like, if you're doing it right, it shouldn't feel like somebody's trying to sell something to you. And you guys don't come across as like this salesy, couple. You come across as somebody that's like your friend that wants to help. Who would you say of the two of you? Are you guys both pretty entrepreneurial? Did you guys grow up with entrepreneurs? What's the background on like growing the business? Like, who's that one?
Yeah, see, it's so funny because I would say neither of us, to be really honest. So Ash has a little bit of that growing up. Her grandparents, she comes from a really, really tiny town in Southwest Virginia, where there's maybe 300 people. There's no stop signs.
Wow.
No stop lights. There's one gas station in town that her grandparents owned and operated for over 50 years. So she has a little bit of that entrepreneurial background from that. But as far as like our parents and stuff like that go, neither of our parents are, I would say instilled that in us. And honestly, a lot of it we kind of fell into. And like I said, I think a lot of it came from starting off on the right foot. And what you just described is something that we kind of accidentally started and has been really like our key to success all along. And that is that we don't come across as being salesy because we aren't really salesy types of people, right? We're just really putting ourselves out there in a really genuine way. And like I said, a lot of that comes from the photographers that I followed when I first started my business, and kind of where I found this foundation for my business when I started it way back when I was in college. And what I think is really interesting is that in the photography world, like I said, I think 2010-ish, there was sort of this shift. And there used to be this perception of, wedding photographers that they showed up in the black shirt with the black pants, and they had like the nerdy vest on, and they had all these cameras strapped around them, and they were just kind of like, usually men, usually kind of rude, and just kind of like boss people around and took photos all day. And it was kind of a necessary evil, right? Yep. And I feel like that perception of photographers has completely shifted over the last, like I said, 8 to 10 years or so, to now where, for however reason or whatever reason, it is a primarily female dominated industry. And obviously there's male photographers out there, but there's a lot of females out there. And I think the best way I would describe it is that the photography world has shifted into sort of a client first focused approach to weddings and marketing and things like that. And we're obviously like, the work is important and those types of things, but that's not the most important thing. And one of the biggest distinctions I think I see between looking at, a videographer Facebook group that we're a part of and a photographer Facebook group that we're a part of is that the video Facebook group, everyone is so focused on the gear and the specs and the lenses and, the editing techniques and which program should I be using, like all these different things, right?
Yeah.
And you look at some of these photographers and, they don't, not that they don't care about those types of things, but it's not their number one focus, right? A lot of them shoot with the same cameras. They might only shoot with 1 or 2 lenses. A lot of them, you're either outsourcing their editing or they're just, doing batch editing. Just like a very kind of different world, but they're very much focused on their client experience. And the questions are around like, what kind of gifts are you sending to your clients? And, what does your process look like? And all these different things, right? And I just think that shift started in the photography world right when I started getting involved. So that's really what we've built the foundation of our business on, is this very client focused, client service sort of based business that really is contingent more about us and our personality and selling them on who we are, and less on selling them on our work or the sharpness of our films or anything like that, right? Because that's where I think there's like a really big distinction. And I think that's one of the things that sets us apart from other maybe filmmakers in our area. Yeah,
and I've said this a lot, and again, the same, kind of reiterating what you're saying, the work isn't really the most important thing. Like, it really does come down to the client relationship with these people, especially with people that I'm seeing that are charging, $5,000 or more for a wedding film. Is that like, my work is really good, like Redeemed Production's really good at what we do, especially to our brides and their families and the people, but it's not like on a wedding videographers group when someone is like, hey, tag your favorite videographers for inspiration. Like, I'm not getting tagged on that. And
that's how I feel exactly the same
and
way.
it's like, it's okay to me. I had a guy the other day that I was talking to about maybe second shooting for him out on a East Coast wedding. And he's like, send me your reel. And I sent him my reel and he's like, oh, okay, your work's decent. I'm going to find somebody else though that has more creative of an eye. And I just looked at the pricing and stuff, and it's like, I'm charging 3 times more than what he was charging. And I just, responded to a question that he was asking just to see like what he was charging or would be willing to pay, because it was in a state I'd never been to. And I was like, it'd be fun. I'm not busy. It's off. But the point of that was, it's funny to me how much we put our value in just the creativity, more so than we do the business side of things, And so, I mean, I get a lot of feedback about the business side of things, and that's where I want to spend a lot of our talking points today, is just kind of talking about, like, to me, what is sexy is running a business that's like making a lot of money. I want to make a lot of money, but I want to do that by helping a lot of people. And I want to do that in a way that doesn't feel icky or slimy or like you need to take a bath when I'm done talking to you. And so, like, I draw energy from, like, how can I serve these people and give so much to these people that I don't have to market anymore in a few years, And so, like, in 2018, I didn't market anymore. I all of my marketing was, word of mouth and just posting our videos, and that was it. There was no like paid advertising, and that is not the new Mavic 2 Pro, or it's not sexy, but it's like, that's what's sexy to me in business. And sorry that I'm saying sexy so many times. It's starting to get, it's too many times. But if you could talk to me just kind of about, I guess, what your starting point is today, like how many weddings you're trying to take each year, what all's included in those packages, I guess.
Sure. So, first of all, before we go any further, I need to say that my wife, Ashley, she is a huge, huge component, and she's like the main reason why our business has been able to grow and scale at the way that it has. I handle most of like the technical things in the business, as far as like the shooting and the gear and the editing and all those types of things. But as far as like the brand and like our personality being out there and people connecting with us on a whole nother level, and all of our interactions with our brides and all that sort of stuff, although it's sort of like a team in how we approach it in the strategy behind it, she is the one implementing it, and she is the one really bringing that to life. So I don't want to go any further without giving her tons and tons of credit, because she is really a huge key component to that in our business.
Good man. That's a good man.
But moving on from that. So as far as like packages and stuff like that go, we've kind of evolved this over the years, and I know there's kind of like that big debate out there between like a la carte versus packages and like which is better or whatever. So we actually were a la carte for a long time. I watched the Ray Roman Creative Live, which I feel like, again, a lot of people have, and he kind of sold me on the a la carte packaging. And then a couple years ago, we actually switched over to kind of like a combo sort of deal. And we found that just kind of worked better for us. So basically right now we have our lowest package just includes 6 to 8 minute film. We found that this sort of be the sweet spot for films for us and for our style and what we like to produce. Mm-hmm. So we kind of only offer that. We don't offer any other like longer cuts. That's the only one we offer. So 6 to 8 minute film, the 8 hours of coverage, the 2 of us, and that's pretty much it. So we try to keep that bottom package as bare bones as possible. Mm-hmm. Our middle package includes the same thing as the bottom package. The only thing we include full speeches, full ceremony, and full dances. Mm-hmm. And the way we have that priced is if you were to buy all those things, they're all also offered a la carte. So if you only wanted the dances or the speeches, you could have those. Yeah. But the way that they're priced, it makes more sense to just go to that middle package. Our goal is to make that middle package one that we book 90% of the time. And so our bottom package is priced at our, the minimum we're willing to take for a weekend, the minimum we're willing to show up and give away, a Saturday during wedding season. And then that middle one is us just trying to make an extra $1,000, right? If we can make an extra $1,000 on every wedding on top of our minimum, then that's great for us. So we make that middle package so enticing that it almost doesn't make sense not to book it once you've kind of really looked at all the numbers and stuff like that. And then the top package we have priced significantly higher than that. Much, much, much higher, again, to make that middle package look that much more appealing. And that top package, I call it kind of more of the documentary, like a weekend documentary package. Mm-hmm. So it includes a lot of extra hours, I think up to 15 or 16 hours of coverage, spread out across, however long the whole weekend is. So that would be if they wanted rehearsal dinner coverage, if they wanted us to come, go golfing with the groomsmen for a few minutes, or if they're going go-karting, whatever they're doing, more of like that holistic sort of documentary style package. And that's a little bit longer of a film just just because, obviously we're filming more, we can have more included. We don't book that one very often. It's just really there sort of like an anchoring point for that middle one. And if somebody really wants it,
might as well offer it.
Yeah, we might as well offer it. So so that's kind of the packages that we're offering right now. And it's taken us a little while to get to find that, but I think it's been working really well for us. Like I said, the majority of our clients and our couples are booking that middle package.
Okay. And price range for those ish?
Yeah, so we start at, I can't remember, we just changed it for 2019. I want to say like either 4,800 or 5,200. I can't remember which one we went up to. Yeah. And then $1,000 more for the middle one over whatever the bottom package is. And then the top one is like 2,500 or 3,000 more than that. Yeah. So it's around $10,000 for that top package.
That's awesome. And about how many are you trying to shoot in a year? Like,
sorry. So last year we shot 22 weddings, which was kind of like our max, I think. The problem, you know how it is, it's never, we're going to have 4 every single month and it's going to be perfectly spread out and we'll get up to 2. We end up having, a stretch where I think we went 13 weeks in a row, having at least one wedding or a double header, for 13 weeks in a row, which is just too much. It's too much from an editing perspective. It's too much from just like a sanity perspective, and all this stuff. So anyway, our goal for this year, especially with the baby coming and all those different things, is going to be, right now we're saying 12. We're willing to maybe flex that to 15 if we find 3 additional amazing weddings. And again, depending on when they fall in the year. So that's our goal for that. And then our goal is also this year to kind of ramp up some of the other areas of our business in terms of, educational stuff and commercial work and those types of things, and kind of pouring more into those as we kind of scale back weddings just a little bit.
And I mean, a lot of people, that are listening don't have kids, don't have a spouse yet or something. And so, I mean, I remember my daughter Anna is 8, and I remember the first season of oh wait, I've booked 20 weddings for next year and now we're pregnant. And my wife's never helped us with the business, but it was still just wait a sec, I want, life is changing for me. And I remember having to shift that, to realize, especially now since she's a second grader, it's if I'm gone on Saturday and really tired on Sunday, those are the 2 days that we get as a family. And so it's
right. Those are soccer games or whatever. Yeah. All that sort of stuff.
It really changes, the perspective. And so I like to throw it out there to the listeners. That's we're all in different seasons of our life, and if you're young and 20 and wanting to build a brand and wanting to shoot 40 weddings or 100 or whatever, go kill it. Do whatever, do you and be true to who you want to be. But I've realized that if you're not planning forward at least a year to 2 years because of our industry, people booking us for 2020 right now, if you don't turn that Titanic, the ship takes a long time to turn. And so,
for sure.
It kind of leads me into the next part of the conversation that I was wanting to talk about with you. And I think it is really good timing, with Ashley being pregnant. But just I've learned over the years, that I spend a lot of time wasting my time sending the same email again and again, or having to remember to reach out to that bride, or having to remember, all these things that repeat in my business. And I know you guys do a really good job just about a couple of these things. And I wanted to talk to you all just about your plans moving forward with the baby, how these kinds of things are helping you. If you're a business person, if you're business minded listening to this, I really want to kind of get geeky and really flex on the geeky side of things. Not too much to go over the heads of people that are business sucks, but just kind of talk to you a little bit about your workflow with a bride, with your, with the couples. So to start out with, I know you guys have talked about different email sequences that you guys have, processes for inquiries, workflows. What is I guess from the time that somebody's kind of reaching out to you, what is your workflow? Do you have email sequences? Is it all automatic? What does that look like for you guys?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's one of the most important things is to be able to have a really great client experience. We talked about that is the backbone of our business, and then being able to replicate that bride after bride after bride after bride. And like you said, we've never spent any money on traditional marketing. One time when I was in college, I got suckered into signing up for the Knot for 6 months or whatever, and I got 0 leads from it. So that was the first and last time I ever, paid for quote unquote marketing. And we really view our brides and client experience that we offer. We view that as an investment in marketing. So I can just kind of take it from the top. And again, this is kind of all Ash's world. I know about it, but she's really kind of the mastermind and the one who engineers all of this.
Give us all of Ashley's wisdom.
Yes, all of Ashley's wisdom. So, okay, so we have a contact form on our website, and just one little quick note I always like to chime in about contact forms. You want to make that as easy of a process as possible.
Right.
You don't want to have too many questions on there. A lot of times people will have like, well, I need to find out if they're the right fit or whatever, and they'll ask a million questions on the contact form. And the problem with that is you want someone to find you, however, social media, some video, whatever, click on your website, click on your contact form, and really like in that all like whatever emotion brought them to that point, really quickly be able to contact you, at least have so you know who they are and you can reach out to them. If they get your contact form and it's going to take them 15 minutes to fill it out, they're not gonna submit it. You're never gonna have that information. You're not gonna have that lead to be able to follow up with, to put into your workflow or whatever it is. So make just a few of the fields required. We have 5 or 6 questions that are on there that are pretty simple, responses, but we don't make the one that's like, tell us about your wedding day, like what's exciting to you about it. We don't make that a requirement, because if they're really excited and they want to tell us all about it, we've had people write us, paragraphs talking about their wedding day. That's great. That tells us that they're really interested and they're really excited about their wedding and their video or whatever. If they just leave it blank or they write like 1 or 2 words, that's also very telling to us, but we don't want them to be a barrier to them submitting that inquiry. So anyway, so they fill out that inquiry form. We do have right on our contact page our starting prices, just so that there's no surprises. We don't want to waste our time with a bunch of people inquiring that have $500 budgets and having to either like let them down or waste our time emailing them or whatever. And sometimes that still happens, but having it right there on the contact page, kind of clearly like, hey, packages start at $4,800, $5,200, whatever it is, kind of helps to weed out some unnecessary emails. But so that all goes through HoneyBook. We use HoneyBook. Do you use a client management software?
Yeah, we're on ShootQ, and Nick is on HoneyBook, and I bought the lifetime membership 5 years ago, and it's like I keep wanting to switch over to HoneyBook, but ShootQ is pretty solid too. Yeah,
so we used to have ShootQ. We had ShootQ for a long time, and it was great. And then same thing with HoneyBook. We got in on the early membership program or whatever, so we have it for life or whatever it was. So, but it doesn't really matter what you use. All of them pretty much do a lot of these things similarly. So that'll come through, and that'll go to Ash. And so this process is a combination of both like Ash doing a lot of it manually and a lot of automation at the same time. So when the email comes through, Ash will respond with, she has sort of like a copy and paste response like that she'll put in, but then she'll personalize that first paragraph to, based on the information on their inquiry and those types of things. But there's also some like standardized stuff in there that she'll talk about as far as, just some like generic wording that we want to use about how excited we are and blah, 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 like all that sort of stuff. She doesn't have to be typing that every single time. And then what we respond with is our packages and our pricing. So the way we have that laid out is we actually have a little PDF. It's about 5 or 6 pages. And the goal behind that is to we don't want to just send them the pricing, because if they're price shopping, again, we want to show them sort of the value and then give them the pricing. So what we'll do, so it starts off with a little bit of information about us, who we are, kind of our stories, and smiling pictures of us, right? Talks a little bit about our philosophy when it comes to weddings, how we view wedding videography, how we view weddings in general, and just a little bit about, some FAQs, like those types of things are kind of all included in there. And then towards the back, we have the actual pricing breakdown and all that sort of stuff. So we'll send that to them. And then we always try and set up some sort of a Skype meeting, some sort of a Google Hangout, Skype, FaceTime, whatever it may be. And if we have to just do a phone call, we'll do just a phone call. But our goal is to try and get them on a Skype call. And the reason we like to do that is because we want to, kind of make sure that they're a good fit for us and make sure that we're going to be a good fit for them. So, we respond kind of based on how they respond back. We will, try and set that time up. And honestly, most of the time, if we get to the point where we're talking to somebody on a FaceTime call, we have a pretty high conversion rate of booking them at that point. If they've gone through all the different steps of everything I just mentioned, and they're interested in having a Skype call, most of the time they're usually interested in booking, just at where we're at in life and our price point and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, they've seen the prices, they've seen you guys, and I was making a couple notes while you're talking. One thing that I think you guys do really well, and I think a lot of people don't do well, is you show off your personality all over your website. Like, people know that you guys exist. They know what your faces look like. They know that you guys seem happy and in love. And like, you know, like there's just this vibe that when people go to your website that it's like, oh, this is like a really sweet couple that also loves filming weddings that would be fun to hang out with on my wedding day. Like that's the vibe I get from like just checking out your website. And I think a lot of people, like I was mentoring a guy the other day and he said, would you look at my website? And it was a black and white website that had 3 YouTube links on it. And on the about page, it just said, you know, a little black and white paragraph. The logo was black and white. Everything was just vanilla. Here's all of our prices. There was a couple of misspellings. And it was like, you know, I went through and I was like, are you pretty tough? Are you okay with me like ripping this to, you know, and he was like, seriously, I need it. You know, this is my 2nd year of going. And I was like, I have no idea what you look like. I have no idea what you care about. I have no idea. And like just the importance of, especially in 2019, like the putting yourself in front of the screen. You know, I know that a lot of the camera people here, it's like, I like to be behind the camera, but like, I mean, getting shots of you doing you know, being you and putting that out there and communicating or, you know, on our pricing page now, I recorded a video. And it's like got me as a talking head with B-roll of me working at a wedding, like showing what we do, why we do what we do. And it's like by the time a bride reaches out, she gets that link that also has a video that's like, hey, watch this first. They hear about our story. They see us. They can hear our voice, see our face. Then there's pictures of Nina, our photographer, and her family. There's me with my family and like all of these details about us. And then at the bottom, after they've kind of been immersed in like this culture that I'm trying to create, there's the pricing. And so,
right,
like you said, your conversion rates go way up because by the time that they have actually set up that Skype call with you or that FaceTime or whatever, it's like they know your prices, they know your personality. You know, you've filtered it way down to like, why wouldn't they? The only reason they wouldn't book you would be as if they're like trying to decide between like you and somebody else that's also, you know, expensive, or, you know, that they're like, ooh, I love both of these people. It's, you know,
right.
It's not just like, what's your prices? You know, and it's like, that's the, you know, the email we get or the Facebook message we get all the time. It's like, send me your pricing info.
Right.
So yeah,
those ones when we get emails like that, we pretty much know that they're not going to be, they're not going to be what we're looking for. And they're not going to be, usually people aren't willing to invest as much as we charge in video if they're not passionate about it. Very rarely. I mean, every once in a while we'll have like a big budget wedding where they just like have a really big budget and they don't care super much, but they just want it and they don't want it cheap or whatever. You know, that happens every once in a while. I'm sure you guys get that too because you guys are, you know, probably, I think you charge more than we do, but you know, that happens. But most of the time people who are willing to invest that much, especially in video, because we all know that like photography is sort of like the default. Everyone gets photo, but if everybody to just want a video, like they have to kind of know that they want it and kind of go out there and search it out, which is, you know, a whole other conversation we can probably do a whole podcast about. But yeah, I think for us, the part of the reason why that conversion rate is so high is partially because of the process that we have. And we can talk about websites if you want to talk about websites a little bit. But I think for us, it's because of where people are finding us. You know, so many of these brides are like, oh my gosh, I've been following you for 4 years, ever since so-and-so's wedding, because, you know, that you posted about it on Instagram. I started following you on Instagram or, you know, whatever.
Yeah,
or
that's huge.
I've been following the blog or I've been following, you know, whatever. And I love that you guys do whatever. And they ask us questions about like Ashley's parents' cat, who will sometimes stay with us, and Ash talks about all the time on Instagram, right? Like random stuff like that is what people are like remembering, and you're constantly kind of on top of mind for them. So when they get engaged, they're like, yes, I finally get to have the Herrintons. I'm so excited. Like it's finally my turn to have the Herrintons. And the beauty about that is that there's nobody else who is us, right? We are the only Herrintons, and we're the only ones who can kind of provide that for them. And yes, there's other filmmakers out there. And even if like price points all the same, if they want us, there's only one us. Yeah. And if we're selling ourselves on that, then we're not competing on price anymore. We're not competing on the quality of our work or whatever. We're just really trying to get them to fall in love with us and, you know, and have the work to back it up.
Yeah. And at that point, I mean, you know, like we're getting that. I mean, this is our 13th year doing weddings. It's like people are messaging us saying, please tell me you're available, and it's like
right.
Up until a few years ago, I was not putting my face on anything. I wanted to build a big company and just be kind of behind it. I didn't think people would want like a guy at their wedding film, like, all these things that you're nervous about, that you self-talk and you tell yourself that, oh, well, brides won't want to hang out with a guy, or like they would want like a female, they would want, and all these things, no matter what it is or what stage you're in, there will always be that like self-doubt, and to me, just like putting our personality out there now, whenever people come in to meet with us or meet us online, they know us. They know about our daughters. They know that I like Taylor Swift. They know that I'm an Oklahoma City Thunder fan. They know like these things that we're putting out there. And I've done a couple videos about this, but this time last year we had about 15,000 Instagram followers. And I went through and looked, and a lot of them was spam. It was a lot of different, hair extension companies and weight loss pills and like all these things.
Right, yeah.
And I found an app. It's called Cleaner, and I went through and I blocked 10,000 accounts. Like I hadn't paid for these people, but like just over time, because I've been doing Instagram since day one.
I saw that. That's crazy.
It's like we went down to 4,000 people, because it's like I care so much more about having a focused audience than I do this big, wide, like you don't have to impress everybody. You have to impress 20 people a year or 25 people a year. And so like that's the point of, like from the moment that they contact you, it's like you don't want to just be another number in their spreadsheet. You want to stand out. You want to have something that's like, oh, I like them. I remember them. And so a lot of people too that are in their first or second or third year of shooting, they have to realize that like while they're at these weddings that they're shooting and when they're promoting them, that like their future audience is there watching them do what they're doing. And, you post a video for Jimmy and Susie's wedding that just happened. It's like 10 bridesmaids are seeing that. And are you going to capture their attention, or are you just going to be like another person that was there, like the wait staff was there that day that they're going to forget about? And so, yeah.
And that's, like what you just said, like that literally is the key to our whole business, right? So when we talk to these people, we have these Skype calls with them, right? We'll talk about their wedding eventually, but we always kind of lead with like, so what do you guys do? Where are you from? Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to high school? Where'd you go to college? What is your job? Like whatever. And just kind of try and connect on like any level that we can that's beyond just video stuff, like beyond just their wedding. And we'll talk about that eventually, and we'll answer their questions in whatever way possible. Most of the time, by the time we get to that point, like, do you have any questions about your film? They're like, well, they might have a few things maybe like they got from the knot or whatever. Sure. But for the most part, like we just want to get them to like get to know us and see that the people that they've been following us and what we put out online, like that's who we really are. And like, that's what they're going to get. And like, that relationship is so much more important. And then, so after we get off that and we book them, then the entire process from then until the wedding day is all about just kind of continuing to build that relationship and stay front of mind. And it's a little bit different for video because we don't have an engagement session. We don't really have any more like necessary interaction with them until we get to the wedding day. But we'll do things where, right after they book with us, we send them a little gift, and it's really something simple. We use Greetable, which is just a website where you can go and put their information in. And I think we send like gummy bears or something, right? So we'll send that out. We send, a month before the wedding, we send like a date night gift card with, for dinner and a movie, and a little note that's like,
that's awesome.
Have a date night on us, like trying to like, but just promise us you won't talk about the wedding, whatever, just like anything like that, just to show them that we really care.
Yeah.
We also do like little things like we send them questionnaires that ask questions that are like, how did you guys meet? How did you get engaged? What do you love about each other? What's your favorite thing about the other person? What's the most important thing to you about your wedding day? Whatever, like all those different things. So we're kind of combining all this different information into like really caring about them, so that when we show up, A, we're like learning more about them. And B, when we show up on a wedding day, we know what to focus on. We know what's important to them. And we're able to create films just really naturally that appeal to them more than anything else, because we already know, oh, they have a really great relationship with their dad, or like this moment is really important to her, or, oh, they met, this is how they met, and we kind of know their story and whatever. And our goal for our films is to make them not just, pretty eye candy, but to make them basically a summary of, their life up to that point, their relationship up until that day, and then how that day is more of like the culmination of their relationship and sort of the beginning of this new phase of the relationship, rather than just like a single day in their life, which is, a lot. I think we're not the only ones that have that perspective. But, like kind of just combining all of those different things and all of those different aspects and really getting to know them and caring about them is really what sets us apart. And I think it's so funny in these videographer Facebook groups where people are complaining about, they're like, oh, I'm in XYZ bride group and this girl's looking for a $500 photographer, or videographer. That makes me so mad, blah, blah, blah. And I look at that and I'm just like, well, okay, fine. Like that's fine. Like, why does that bother you? That is not you have to find 20 people or 30 people or even 40 people who are your person, and that's just not one of them. So like, why are you spending all this time worrying about a random girl down the street who has a $500 budget for video when that's not who you're trying to find out? Just worry about the people you're trying to find, do the best job you can pleasing them and being there for them, and everything also fall into line.
Yeah. I want to rewind back just a little bit to just talking about, like, we were talking about Shoot Queue and CRMs and Honeybook and all that, and just about like the process. So just so the listeners kind of, I want to hear more about, like, from inquiry to the end of the, you've sent them the film. You talked about questionnaires, and I just want to talk a little bit about how important those kinds of things are, how they're automated for you all. But also make them, you said you make them feel personal. I know that we send out through Shoot Queue questionnaires before different meetings that have questions for them to answer and different things. And how important is that to your business? For somebody that has no idea what we're talking about, what does that even look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So within Shoot Queue, you can create a questionnaire that kind of goes into their profile, so to speak. So when we book, we do a $2,000 deposit, and then the contract and all that stuff is online. So once they've got all that squared away, and we they can pay everything online and use a credit card, and we eat the fees for that. Again, that's just more customer service that we're trying to give them. Then at that point, usually right after we have that initial call, right after they sign the contract, we'll send the first questionnaire, and basically it's just essentially a form, but we do it through Honeybook. You could do it through Google Forms or however you want to do it, but for us, it's easier to do it through Honeybook because then all the information is all in one place. When 12 months later, we're getting ready to shoot their wedding, we don't have to go track it down. It's nice that it's all just kind of right within there. But we kind of explained it to them a little bit on the call as well. So like, hey, we're going to send you some questionnaires that basically just, ask a lot of the same questions that we just asked, but it's really nice for us to have it in writing so that we can remember it. And then when Ash goes to write the blog post, for their wedding, she's able to pull quotes and copy and paste directly from their words and directly from the questionnaire, as opposed to trying to remember every little detail about how they got engaged, or like, oh, was it at this beach or whatever. So that's how. So that first questionnaire is primarily that, just like basic personal information, like I said, everything they want to know about each other. So we have that locked away, and that's easy because they already know all that information. It's just stuff that they just have to take the time to do it. So that's the first questionnaire. And then about a month before the wedding, we'll send the second questionnaire. And that's going to ask a lot more of like the fine details about the wedding day itself. And we don't want to send that right away because that'll overwhelm them and making them think like, oh my gosh, I don't know what time the catering staff is going to show up. Like, should I know that right now? And it kind of puts them in a bit of a frenzy. So we just wait until a month before the wedding. And those are more specific questions like, do you have a planner? Like, what's the name of the day of coordinator? What's their phone number? Who's the photographer? What's their phone number? Just any of those little like details and stuff. Like, are you doing a first look? Have you decided? Are there any special moments you're doing? Like a first look with dad, or burying the whiskey. I don't know if they do that where you guys are from.
No.
But like where they like dig up the bourbon bottle or whatever, right? Like those types of things that we need to know about that are more like,
what?
It's a southern thing.
That's
Apparently
awesome.
it's good luck to bury a bottle of bourbon where you're going to get married. And then on the day of the wedding, you like dig it up and then they like pass it around with the bridal party and stuff.
Impressive.
Yeah. But like little things like that, right? Where it's just like a thing on the timeline you need to be aware of. And, we ask about the final timeline. And a lot of times we coordinate with the photographers and stuff like that to make sure that they're really well taken care of and that their timeline is going to work well for them. And it's going to be stress-free. And, we don't let them have a bad timeline. If they have a bad timeline, at that point, we're going to say something about it. We need to know about that early enough. If they send us the timeline 3 days before the wedding,
too late.
You're not going to be able to change anything at that point. Yeah. So we try and get all that stuff ahead of time. And at a point where we're pretty confident they're going to have all that information, again, and that all kind of goes into their wedding folder, their wedding, whatever, profile or whatever it's called. And then what we do, what Ash is really great about and what really helps us and why it's really beneficial to us to do all this stuff is before every wedding, she'll go through and she'll print all of those out. and she has a little clipboard that she carries on the wedding day. And as we're in the car, driving to the first getting ready spot or whatever, just kind of in the morning getting ready, she'll go through and she'll read all the responses to that questionnaire. She'll say like, this is, Jim and Susie's wedding. Remember they met here. This is what they said about X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
These are things that are important to them. Then we kind of go through the timeline together, so that way we're on the same page as far as big major events. And I'll look that stuff over the night before, just for like a logistical planning perspective. But as far as just like remembering who the couple is, and so that when you show up, you have something to talk about, and remember remember we talked to them and he was also a Caps fan. Make sure you mention that when you talk to him, or whatever, because I don't remember the Skype call that we had 12 months ago. And I've had 50 since then, so I'm not going to remember every little detail, but going through that usually kind of helps refresh our memory and just give them that much better of a client experience.
And I think too, like, if most people would have a CRM, but if they don't, there's so many tools built into those, like when it comes to, we have a wedding video workflow timeline. Like you can, on ShootQ, I'm sure it's same in Honeybook, but like you can just set whenever they're signing the contract, I have a wedding video workflow. So I click that, and then it automatically puts them into a sequence to get an email 6 months before the wedding saying, hey, we want to schedule this thing, and 3 months saying, hey, this, and then 2 months a questionnaire, and 1 month and then a week after the wedding we give them, we send a happy 1 week anniversary email, and this is the status of your films, and then a 3 month anniversary, and then a 1 year anniversary, and like we have just like these things. Do you guys have things after the wedding that you're putting into those things too?
Yeah, so that's one of my goals for this year, is to get that process to be more automated, kind of like you just said. So right now, Ash is so good at it that she does a lot of that stuff. She just kind of knows, and she's checking constantly. Okay, especially closer to wedding season. Okay, like so and so's wedding, it's a month from today. They need this email, whatever. But a lot of that stuff could be automated. So that's one of my goals. Obviously, for when we have a baby and stuff like that, we want to automate as much of that stuff as possible. But one of the biggest things that we do after the wedding is, after we send them their film, we always send them an email basically saying like, hey, here's your film, blah, blah, blah. And then about like a week or two later, we'll send another email basically asking for a review and being like, hey, we loved working with you guys. I hope, so glad to see you loved your film. So glad to see that you shared it on Facebook, blah, 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 whatever. Hey, if you had some time, we'd really love it. Really mean a lot to us if you were to, if you could write some sort of review about your experience with us, those types of things. If you can either send it to me, or if you could go onto, our Facebook page or whatever, those types of things, and leave some sort of a review. That would be really helpful to us. We loved working with you guys, and hopefully you had a great experience, or, whatever. Like something like a really simple intentional email like that. Because they want to help us. They're like, oh my gosh, we loved our film. Everything was so great. We can't believe how amazing you guys are. We really, sometimes they'll even ask us, hey, is there somewhere we can leave a review? And it's just, but if they don't, just giving them that little bit of encouragement to pass that along. But yeah, and then, everything that Ash does, she puts her personality and her kindness and just the way that she talks to the brides, and just she has a very unique way of like speaking and presenting herself. So that is infused in like everything that we do here. So everything's written kind of in her voice and in a very like professional yet informal, not like standoffish way. So she's really good about all that sort of stuff, which is kind of like another just little like secret little element in there that makes everything that much better.
I think too, especially in like 2019, people care so much more about the people behind the brand than the logo of the brand, and like just all of our emails that we're currently redoing all of our template emails, like, the first time inquiry emails, and just the way that everything's written everywhere is like I'm talking to my friend, not like I'm trying to sell a wedding film. And just that personal touch and remembering what's important to them, and having that, building that out, especially as you're growing your family, having things that are automated. I'm sure you'll see more and more that, personalization on something that's automated, but there's a lot of things that it's just like, hey, we need to set up a meeting, and that's an email that just needs to go out, so you don't have to remember to keep up with that. And the more time that I can be away from having to do the same thing again and again, the more time I can focus on their film, focus on their edit, focus on my family, those kinds of things. So anyway, I do need to, we're getting a little closer on time than I wanted to be, but I want to move to talking just about a couple of things, the education side of things and the importance of it with your brand towards educating brides as well as like educating filmmakers. I want to start just by like, what are you doing to educate your brides, like to build your business? Like, are you, what types of things are you guys doing to make sure that they're well educated about what you offer, things like that?
Yeah. So like I said, even from the very beginning with like on our website, we have lots of, it really is kind of like we try and put it as many places as possible. So we have lots of different blog posts and lots of different things on our website, kind of just detailing things that brides would want to know, stuff that they might be searching for. And if we get questions about those things, we can kind of point them in that direction. That initial pricing that we send has a lot of tips and things like that in there, as far as like frequently asked questions about stuff that we know people are going to ask about.
Yep.
We've done this enough. We know that almost all brides have a question about whatever. So we send that stuff out there as part of the conversation that we have with them over Skype. We try and end that with a lot of, explaining things, setting expectations. And honestly, that's the biggest thing. It doesn't matter how you go about doing it. The most important thing is that you're setting the expectation so that they know exactly what to expect from you, exactly what they can get, exactly what they're not going to get. And that's going to save you a lot of problems down the road. So again, that comes in within our pricing, the way we talk about them. And then Ash has a whole bunch more emails that I'm like, the problem is I feel like I'm probably butchering Ash's entire email process here, because she has lots of different emails that she sends, more than I even realize that she's sending. And she has different emails that, lay out, here are some tips for, things to avoid. And like I said, we're helping with the timeline. A lot of that is like hands-on to make sure that they're not putting themselves in a bad situation or in a stressful timeline or whatever. So it's kind of spread out through the entire process. But like I said, the most important thing is that we're just doing the best job that we can through all these different things to set that expectation so they know exactly what they're getting, what their turnaround time is, all that sort of stuff. It's laid out in our contract. It's just lots of different places. So the more places that you can have information for the brides, the better I think it's going to be for you.
Yeah. Very good stuff. So, when it comes to like education for the filmmaker side of things, we always try to ask, advice for new filmmakers, people that are just getting going. If you were starting your business again, especially on this topic, when it comes to, not wasting much time being repetitive, the workflows, the emails, but anything really, like what types of advice would you give Tyler from 2010, what types of things would stand out to you would want to give our listeners?
Ooh, that's a really good one. So I think one of the things that's, I guess we've been really lucky is that we kind of really started a lot of stuff on the right foot. And the reason why the business continued to grow has nothing to do with me necessarily being a good entrepreneur or me being very like business savvy or whatever. It really comes down to just the way that I've always viewed my clients and putting the clients first and prioritizing that experience. And then everything else kind of just fell into line. And we just, year after year, it was just growth after growth after growth, raising prices, booking more weddings, raising prices, booking more weddings. And again, it's not this like masterful business plan that we came up with. It was just like injecting ourselves into the business. And if you do that from the very, very, very beginning and you focus on those things as being the most important things, then it'll just kind of grow exponentially from there. And you don't have to do much. Like it just continues to grow and grow from there because we're finding people in the right ways who care about us, and we're only taking clients who value what we value. And it's kind of been like that from the beginning, and that just creates a really great trickle down effect. Whereas the opposite can also be true, is if you're focusing too much on just booking every single wedding that you can, or you're only focusing on the pricing and you're giving discounts away left and right, and you're only focusing on the quality of your work and you don't care about things like your website and your processes and your client experience, then you're going to get brides that are just price shopping, and they're just looking for the cheapest thing in town, and they don't value what you offer. And then in turn, they're going to tell their friend like, oh, so-and-so, I got this great video from so-and-so and they only charged me $1,200. I got a steal of a deal because their work is worth way more than that. Mm-hmm. You should go hire them too. And then it starts the exact opposite process, and it starts snowballing the wrong way down the hill, right? So I would say trying to start off from the very, very beginning, being really passionate about taking care of your clients, be really passionate about doing the best job that you can, right? Like every wedding is an opportunity for you to grow your portfolio. And that was one of the things that made a huge difference, I think, from a work standpoint, and just from having that as like a baseline, was I spent so much time before my first wedding and in those first, years of my business, learning and trying to get as much education as I could, and really like practicing and like pouring into both like the craft as well as the business side of things, so that when I got that opportunity, when I got that first wedding, then it was like, then it went from there, because then they could come and they can look at your website like, oh wow, they look really great online. their work is good enough or matches what they're charging. They have this really sweet, great process. And even if you're just getting started and you don't have a lot of experience, those three things, your online presence, having a good baseline standard for your work, like really paying attention to your craft, and having a good, seeming like you know what you're doing, makes a really, really big difference. And if I had to prioritize those, it would probably be the customer experience, online presence, and then your work.
Yeah.
So,
I definitely the common theme that I keep going back to, is the work isn't the most important thing. Now, I do want to reiterate to the listeners that your all's films are beautiful. They're well done. They're well lit. You can tell that you guys are super pro, and anybody that would come to your site from any potential client would be like, oh my goodness, these are the best wedding films I've ever seen. This is not like a wedding film. This is like you hear it all the time. It's like, this looks like a movie. It doesn't look like what I thought of a wedding film. And so I'm not saying, and I'm happy you brought it up, is you do have to be really good at shooting and continue to get better. But the importance of that, if that's the only thing you're focusing on, you'll have a beautiful art that nobody sees, that nobody, and so putting yourself out there in a way, where you do have a great online presence and you do take such great care of them. That is what they talk about. That is, as we've continued to raise our prices more and more and more, the work has had to go up in value as well. But the majority of our weddings where they're booking us for $10,000 or more, they are booking us based on the referral of somebody, not even the work. And so they can't come to our site and be like, oh my goodness, this is terrible. But the thing that, you should be working on is, growing that customer service side of things. Okay. I got a couple of things here. We've just started our own How to Film Weddings Facebook group.
And I'm in
you're
there.
in there. This morning I put in just a question, for you. So I just have a couple of questions. I look through to everybody who, asked a question. I really appreciate it. We've answered most of them. So as we were looking, but I did have one here real quick from Peter Aponte. He's really involved. I like him a lot. He said, how did you start your social media marketing campaigns, more specifically Instagram, and how do you keep up with adding content and maintaining followers / engagement with your posts?
Yeah, that's a great question. So again, I defer to Ash here because she is the Instagram queen. But I think so for us, we don't have a business Instagram, right? We've never ever had the Herrinton's Instagram page. I think we technically own it just so no one else can have it, but we only post on our personal Instagram pages, and we try and do a really great job of combining our personal just postings in life with posting wedding films and behind the scenes and all those different types of things. So I think a lot of it, and for us, we're kind of split in that we're also trying to target filmmakers and things like that for education. So the behind the scenes is more targeted towards them. But just in general, I would say when it comes to Instagram or social media or whatever, one, again, just inject your personality into it. Don't be afraid to show who you are. And two is just continue. I mean, you need to show up, you need to be consistent, and try and find that balance and think about your ideal client and think about who they are and what they're looking for when they come to your Instagram. The goal is for them to have something on there that they can connect to and be like, oh my gosh, I also love coffee. I also love traveling or whatever it might be. Just a way so when again, all of our clients, when they talk to us, oh my gosh, I can't believe we're finally getting to talk to you in real life. I feel like I know you, right? And that for us is kind of always the goal. So again, there's a fine line between putting out crazy stuff and that'll be deterring to potential brides. So you do have, there is a little bit of curation there. We are intentional about those things. There are certain things that we, don't necessarily post, but for the most part, I think if you're being genuine and you're being honest and you're putting yourself out there, people are going to be attracted to that. And the brides who are best going to be suited for you are going to be attracted to that.
Because you kind of want to repel people that are not attracted to you, especially in the business. I mean, I used to always be so afraid, oh my goodness, if I show that this part of me or, that I'm, whatever it is, it's oh, I want people that are actually enthused to meet me based on me just putting myself out there instead of trying to put up this wall. So that's great. That's a great answer. Thank you, Peter.
Sorry, and then I got to add one last thing. Yeah. One little this last little tidbit. Avoid talking about issues that are going to divide people. So politics, sports. Sports depending on how serious you are about you're if you really hate a team, probably don't mention that too much.
Yeah.
Like, but just in general, like any sort of what is the right word? Any topic is going to divide people or might be kind of controversial or whatever. Like you can be really passionate about politics, and if you have a really strong stance on that, like I'm not saying you need to hide that, but just be aware that like those types of things are the things that you just want to be really careful about, especially if you're using your social media as a way to grow your business. And that, again, you don't want to be disingenuous about those things, but whether or not you are a Republican or a Democrat or whatever, that shouldn't matter for somebody's wedding film. So you just want to remember, like, you don't want to put that as like the foremost thing that might repel somebody away from you. Just as like a general blanket statement.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yes, you just want to make sure that you're thinking before you're posting.
Right, exactly. And if you want to have those conversations, have them with your friends and your family and whoever else, and just know that like you kind of are sacrificing like being able to post whatever you want on your social media if you're going to be using it to grow your brand personally.
That's awesome. But yeah, to those that are listening, we did, Nick and I went back and forth on like, do we want to build another Facebook group out there? And the main point of that group is we want to be able to source questions for our podcast, be able to connect directly with our listeners. If you're not on it, just search How to Film Weddings on Facebook. We've got our Facebook page, and it's linked right there with a group itself. So join that. There's a few questions to answer to make sure you're not a robot. But to kind of wrap things up, Tyler, where can people find you? Where's the best place for them to see your work, to get some of that education you're talking about? I know we could talk for a lot longer about the business side of things, but where can people find you?
Yeah, for sure. So the best place to find us is, a couple of different places. Our website, just theherrintons.com. You can find us on youtube.com/theherrintons. If you want to follow us on Instagram, that's a really great way to kind of get like a really good look into our lives and to find out more about who we are. So I'm at Tyler Herrinton, just my name. Ash is at Ashley Herrinton, super easy to find. And then as far as like education and stuff like that goes, I just want to say, so what we talked about here, kind of the business stuff or whatever, is really just scratching the surface. And we're, like you said, we could talk about this for hours and hours and hours. And if you're interested in that, we have a lot of free educational resources on our website as far as PDF downloads and different things like that. But we also offer a few educational courses. And one of the ones that I think would be perfect for anybody who is interested in this podcast and made it all the way to this point in the episode would be, we have the Business of Wedding Filmmaking course. And basically what it is it's Ash and I sitting down and going through our entire business process, everything we talked about here, but in a lot more depth, every little nook and cranny of everything. And we had a live studio audience come in. We filmed it in front of them, which was really cool. But we literally go into every single aspect of our business as far as stuff we talked about today, pricing. Ash details all of her sequences in like a very much more detailed way than I did today. We talk about how to grow your business. We talk about just literally everything you'd ever want to know, probably from like a business standpoint. We talk about websites. We talk about all the different things that we kind of touched on here today. And it's, we filmed it over 2 different days. It's, I think 12 hours of content, if you want to go check that out. And in addition to that, we actually did 3 sit-down interviews with 3 different members of our team that have really impacted our business. So we sat down with our web designer and did, an interview with them about, some important things as far as that goes. We sat down with a CPA and talked about some of the things you really need to know from a taxes perspective, and just kind of, she really breaks it down in a really easy way that's perfect for anybody who's just getting started. Mm-hmm. And we also sat down with our lawyer, and she really broke down, it's literally probably I need to figure out a way to get this out there into the world somehow beyond just in this course. But it's 30 minutes of her saying exactly from a legal perspective what you need to do to set up your business to be 100% legit, 100% legal, and to take all of the guesswork out of it. And she is absolutely amazing. So all those things are free bonuses that come along with your 12 plus hours of business content. So if you guys are interested in that, you can go to our website. We have a little education tab, and you can find it right there and go sign up for that. But that's one of those things that we're really proud of, and I think that it's going to be really beneficial. Again, it's more just like the way that we do stuff, and it's not necessarily, it's hard to say if there's like a right or a wrong way, but if you're interested in how we do things and you want to find out all the details and all that information, you should definitely go check that out.
And I will say too, it's Herrinton, not Herrington. So there's no G.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's like,
thank you. Yes.
Herrinton. So I was like looking it up, and I was like, I can't find it. And I was like, oh, there's no G in his name. So that's just a bonus for the listeners that are going to look at it. But
thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Tyler, for being on. To those of you who have made it this far in the episode, definitely, if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube or listening, share this, write a review, tell people about it. The lifeblood of what we do is people sharing this and connecting us with more and more people that need this information. So, Tyler, thank you so much for being on. And until next time, we'll see you.
See ya.